For decades, a powerful and persistent narrative has shaped global perceptions of the Middle East. This story casts Iran as an existential threat to Israel, a nation supposedly driven by an unyielding desire to destroy the Jewish state. This claim has been repeated so often that it is frequently accepted as fact. It has been used to justify crippling economic sanctions, to sabotage diplomatic efforts, and, as we saw on June 13, 2025, to launch devastating military strikes. The narrative reached a fever pitch when former Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu framed the attack as a last resort to prevent a nuclear holocaust, a term designed to evoke the deepest historical fears of the Jewish people. However, a closer look at this narrative reveals that it is built on a foundation of misinterpretation and political expediency rather than solid evidence. The idea of an impending Iranian-led apocalypse has served as a powerful tool for political mobilization, both domestically within Israel and internationally. It simplifies a complex geopolitical reality into a stark, black-and-white conflict. This framing ignores the nuanced motivations behind Iranian foreign policy, which are often rooted in a post-revolutionary ideology of supporting what it views as oppressed populations and challenging regional power structures, rather than an inherent hatred for a particular people or faith. Understanding this distinction is the first step toward a more accurate and less volatile understanding of the region. The constant repetition of this threat narrative has had profound real-world consequences. It has been instrumental in shaping policies that have increased tensions and brought the region to the brink of wider conflict. For over 30 years, the singular focus on Iran's nuclear program as the one truly existential threat has overshadowed other critical regional issues and has been used to justify actions that many international observers find dangerously provocative. The recent Israeli strikes, which targeted not just military sites but also scientists and commanders, represent the culmination of this long-standing campaign. The justification for such a drastic action relies entirely on the world accepting the premise that Iran poses a genuine, immediate threat to Israel's very existence. But we must ask a critical question. Does this narrative hold up to scrutiny? Is Iran's opposition to the Israeli government truly synonymous with the desire to annihilate the Jewish people? Or is it a political stance against specific policies and actions? The evidence suggests that the existential threat claim is a carefully constructed myth, one that conflates political disagreement with genocidal intent. By examining the historical context and the reality on the ground, we can begin to dismantle this dangerous fiction and see the situation for what it is: a political conflict, not a holy war waiting to happen. The path to peace requires us to look beyond the headlines and fear-mongering. To truly understand Iran's position, we must look past the fiery rhetoric of the last few decades and delve into a much longer history of coexistence. Contrary to the myth of a nation consumed by anti-Semitism, Iran is home to one of the oldest Jewish communities in the world, with a continuous presence stretching back over 2,500 years. This community, while small, is officially recognized and protected under the Iranian constitution. Jewish citizens in Iran practice their faith openly, operating their own synagogues, schools, community centers, and even kosher butcher shops. This reality stands in stark contrast to the image of a state committed to the destruction of the Jewish people. This history of tolerance is not a recent development. It is deeply embedded in Persian culture and identity. It dates back to ancient times, most notably to the reign of Cyrus the Great in the 6th century BCE. Cyrus is a celebrated figure in Jewish history, revered for liberating the Jews from Babylonian captivity and allowing them to return to Jerusalem to rebuild their temple. This foundational act of friendship is a source of pride for many Iranians, and is a testament to a long-standing tradition of religious pluralism that has, for the most part, characterized the relationship between Persians and Jews for millennia. This historical context is essential for understanding the complexities of the modern relationship. Even after the Islamic Revolution of 1979, which brought a radical new government to power, the new constitution formally protected the rights of religious minorities, including Jews. The Iranian parliament, the Majlis, has a permanently reserved seat for a representative of the Jewish community, ensuring their voice is officially part of the national political discourse. While the community has faced challenges and its numbers have declined due to emigration, the institutional framework for its existence and protection remains intact. This fact directly challenges the simplistic notion that the Iranian state is ideologically driven by an all-consuming hatred of Jews. Therefore, the narrative that paints Iran as an inherently anti-Semitic nation simply does not align with the historical and contemporary facts. The continued protected presence of a vibrant Jewish community within Iran's borders serves as a powerful counter-argument. It suggests that the Iranian government is capable of distinguishing between the Jewish people and the political entity of the Israeli state. Acknowledging this long history of coexistence is not to ignore the real political tensions that exist, but to place them in their proper context and resist the dangerous oversimplification that fuels conflict. One of the most effective tactics used to sustain the existential threat narrative is the deliberate conflation of political criticism with religious hatred. Iran's leadership has been consistently and vehemently critical of the Israeli government's policies, particularly its treatment of Palestinians and the occupation of their land. These criticisms are framed by Iran as part of its broader foreign policy, which champions the cause of the oppressed, a cornerstone of its revolutionary ideology. However, this political opposition to the actions of the Israeli state is routinely misrepresented as anti-Semitism, a deep-seated hatred for all Jews. This is a critical and dangerous distortion that serves to shut down legitimate debate. It is entirely possible, and indeed necessary, to criticize the policies of any government without being prejudiced against the people of that nation. Many people around the world, including many Jewish individuals and organizations, are sharply critical of Israeli policies such as settlement expansion and the blockade of Gaza. Iran's stance, while expressed in more aggressive and uncompromising terms, falls within this same category of political opposition. It is a disagreement over land, human rights, and regional power, not a dispute rooted in ancient religious animosity. To label this political opposition as anti-Semitism is to ignore the substance of the criticism and mischaracterize its nature for political gain. This strategy of conflation has been particularly useful for Israeli leaders seeking to rally domestic and international support. By framing any opposition as an attack on the Jewish people, it becomes easier to dismiss criticism and justify aggressive actions as self-defense. Benjamin Netanyahu's political career, for example, has been significantly defined by this strategy. He repeatedly used the specter of an Iranian threat to unify his political coalition, deflect from domestic problems, and argue against international diplomatic efforts like the JCPOA nuclear deal. The June 2025 strike, justified by this very narrative, came at a time of significant political maneuvering, highlighting how the existential threat can be a convenient tool for achieving political objectives. Understanding this distinction is crucial for fostering any chance of a peaceful resolution. When political disagreements are falsely painted as intractable religious hatred, diplomacy becomes impossible. The conflict is presented as a zero-sum game where one side's existence is predicated on the other's destruction. This is simply not the case. Iran's government opposes the political ideology of Zionism and the actions of the Israeli state, not the religion of Judaism or the Jewish people. Recognizing this allows for the possibility of dialogue and de-escalation, while continuing to conflate the two only hardens positions and makes conflict more likely. The perpetuation of the myth of Iran's existential threat to Israel is not just an academic error, it has devastating real-world consequences. It fuels a cycle of fear, aggression, and retaliation that makes the entire region less safe. The Israeli strikes in June 2025 are a terrifying example of this cycle in action. Based on a narrative of imminent doom, the attack may very well have pushed the region closer to the very catastrophe it claimed to be preventing. Experts warn that such an attack is unlikely to permanently destroy Iran's nuclear knowledge and may instead harden its resolve to build a bomb for its own defense, creating a far more dangerous and unstable reality for everyone. This manufactured crisis serves the interests of those who benefit from perpetual conflict, but it does a grave disservice to the people, both Israeli and Iranian, who must live with the consequences. Misinformation and propaganda are powerful weapons that obscure the truth and make enemies out of potential neighbors. The historical reality of religious tolerance in Iran and the clear distinction between political criticism and religious bigotry are inconvenient truths for those who promote a narrative of inevitable war. Ignoring these truths does not enhance Israel's security. It undermines it by closing off diplomatic avenues and promoting a dangerously simplistic worldview. The path toward a more secure and stable future requires a commitment to truth and a willingness to look beyond inflammatory rhetoric. It demands that we learn from history, recognizing the long legacy of peaceful coexistence between Persians and Jews, and apply that lesson to the present. It means acknowledging that criticism of a nation's government is a legitimate part of international relations and should not be automatically dismissed as hate speech. Peace cannot be built on a foundation of fear and misinformation. It must be built on mutual understanding, respect for historical facts, and a shared desire for justice. Ultimately, the goal must be a just and lasting peace for all peoples in the region. This cannot be achieved through military strikes or by perpetuating myths that dehumanize the other side. It can only be achieved by dismantling these dangerous narratives, engaging in honest dialogue, and addressing the root causes of the conflict, including the legitimate grievances of all parties involved. The safety and security of both Israelis and Iranians depend not on who has the stronger military, but on the courage to choose diplomacy over destruction and truth over fear. The time has come to abandon the myth of the existential threat and work toward a future of genuine peace.